I collapsed at work, waking up to a diagnosis that required urgent, expensive surgery. I called my mother for help from the savings I'd contributed to for years, only to learn she drained it all for my brother's bail. So, I initiated the eviction process for the house they didn't realize I still owned. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Kin and Karma. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The floor of the accounting firm felt surprisingly cold against my cheek. That was the last thing I registered: the hum of the server room, the smell of burnt coffee from the break room, and then the sudden, violent shift of the world tilting sideways. When I woke up, the sterility of the hospital room assaulted my senses. The white walls, the rhythmic beeping of the monitor, the antiseptic smell that seems to cling to your skin for days afterward. A doctor was standing over me, looking grim. He was young, probably younger than my brother Kyle, but his eyes held a weight that terrified me. "Margaret," he asked, his voice soft. "I'm Dr. Evans. You had a severe cardiac event brought on by extreme stress and an underlying condition we've just identified. You're stable now, but you're going to need a procedure, a specialized one. And I have to be honest with you, it's going to be expensive, and your recovery time will be significant. You won't be working for at least 3 months." I tried to sit up, but my body felt like it was filled with lead. "Expense isn't the issue," I lied, my voice raspy. "I have savings, I have family." But as the fog in my brain cleared, the panic set in. I did have savings, but the market had been volatile, and I had just put a massive down payment on a new condo for myself, my first real indulgence in 20 years. My liquidity was low, dangerously low, but that was okay. I had a backup plan. I always had a backup plan. For the last 15 years, I had been sending my mother, Brenda, a monthly stipend. It was supposed to be for her living expenses, but we had an agreement. She would save half of it in a joint high-yield account, an emergency fund for the family. It was my safety net disguised as hers. There had to be at least $60,000 in there by now. I reached for my phone on the bedside table, my hand trembling. I needed to hear her voice. I needed my mother. She answered on the second ring, but her tone wasn't the warm, maternal comfort I was desperate for. It was frantic, harried. "Margaret, thank God you called," Brenda said, her voice breathless. "I've been trying to reach you all morning. Where have you been?" "Mom, I'm in the hospital," I said, tears pricking my eyes. "I collapsed at work. It's my heart. I need surgery, Mom. I need help." There was a silence on the other end. A long, stretching silence that made my chest tighten all over again. "Oh, Margaret," she finally said, but the concern felt thin like a coat of cheap paint. "That sounds awful. But listen, honey, we have a crisis here too, a real crisis." "A real crisis," I repeated, the words tasting like ash. "Mom, I'm in the cardiac unit." "It's Kyle," she rushed on, ignoring my reality to bulldoze me with hers. "He was arrested again. Something about fraud with that car dealership investment. Brooke says the bail is set at $50,000. They're going to keep him in county if we don't pay by noon." A cold dread washed over me, colder than the hospital floor. "Mom, you didn't." "I had to," she cried, defensive now. "He's your brother, Margaret. Brooke said if he spends a night in jail, it'll ruin his reputation. He won't be able to start the new business." "The emergency fund," I whispered, my heart monitor beginning to beat faster. "The money I sent you, the money for emergencies." "This is an emergency," Brenda snapped. "And don't be selfish, Margaret. You have a good job, you have insurance. Kyle has nothing. I wired the money an hour ago. It's gone." "All of it?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "All of it. And Brooke says we might need a little more for the lawyer, so if you could transfer." I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't scream. I just let the phone drop from my hand onto the stark white sheets. The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was the realization that my life, my health, my very survival was secondary to my brother's latest screw-up. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. 3 days later, I was discharged. I wasn't healed, far from it, but I couldn't afford the daily rate of the hospital room anymore, not with my checking account looking so grim. The doctor had given me strict instructions: absolute rest, no stress, and the surgery had to be scheduled within the month. If I didn't have the $40,000 for the deductible and the specialists by then, I was gambling with my life. I didn't go to my new condo. I drove, with shaky hands and blurred vision, to the sprawling ranch-style house in the suburbs where my mother lived. It was a beautiful house. A massive oak tree shaded the driveway, and the flower beds were meticulously kept, mostly because I paid a landscaper to come out twice a month. I pulled my 10-year-old sedan into the driveway, parking behind Brooks's shiny new truck and Kyle's lease sports car. Seeing those vehicles side by side made bile rise in my throat. I let myself in with my key. The living room was warm, smelling of cinnamon and old wood. Brenda was sitting on the plush sofa I had bought her for Christmas 3 years ago, watching a talk show. Brooks was in the recliner, a glass of scotch in his hand, at 2 in the afternoon. "Margaret," Brooks said, not getting up. He was a large man, with a face that had once been handsome but had settled into a permanent sneer of entitlement. "You look terrible." "They let you out looking like that." Brenda looked up, guilt flickering in her eyes before she masked it with annoyance. "Brooks is right, Margaret. You look pale. You shouldn't be driving." "I need the money back, Mom," I said, skipping the pleasantries. I remained standing, holding onto the doorframe for support. "I can't book the surgery without a deposit. I have zero cash flow right now because of the condo closing. I need you to get the bail money back." Brenda sighed, a dramatic, suffering sound. "We've been over this. The money is with the court. We can't just ask for a refund like it's a pair of shoes. When Kyle goes to trial, which could be months, we'll get it back. You just have to be patient." "I don't have months," I said, my voice rising. "I have weeks, maybe days. I could have another attack at any moment." "Stop being so dramatic," Brooks interjected, swirling his drink. "You always were the drama queen. Kyle is facing prison time. That's real stress. You just need to take some vitamins and relax. Maybe ask your boss for an advance. You make plenty." "I can't work," I shouted, the exertion making my chest ache. "I am on disability leave. I have no income coming in." Brenda stood up then, smoothing down her skirt. She walked over to me, but instead of hugging me, she placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed hard. "Margaret, listen to me. We are a family. Families sacrifice for each other. You have always been the strong one, the rich one. Kyle is sensitive. He can't handle jail. You can handle being poor for a few months." "I'm not asking to be rich," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I'm asking to be alive." "Well, you can't get blood from a stone," Brooks grunted. "The money is gone, deal with it." I looked at them, I really looked at them. My mother, who I had sheltered and supported since Dad died. Brooks, the man who had moved in 5 years ago and never paid a dime toward the bills. And somewhere in the back of the house, Kyle was probably sleeping off a hangover, safe and sound because of my labor. They looked at me with such disdain. To them, I wasn't a daughter or a stepdaughter. I was a utility. I was an ATM that had malfunctioned, and they were annoyed that they couldn't get their cash. A strange calm settled over me. It was the cold, hard clarity of a balance sheet that finally made sense. "Okay," I said softly. I wiped my face. "Okay, if the money is gone, it's gone." "See," Brenda smiled, relieved. "I knew you'd understand. You're a good girl, Margaret." "I'm going to go now," I said, turning to the door. "Good," Brooks called out. "And hey, next time you come over, bring some of those steaks we like. The fridge is looking a little empty." I walked out of the house. I got into my car. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there for a moment, looking at the house. The house with the new roof I had paid for. The house with the updated HVAC system I had installed last summer. They thought they had won. They thought they had drained me dry and discarded me. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten to check whose name was actually on the deed. To understand why this betrayal broke me, you have to understand the history. My father died when I was 22 and Kyle was 18. Dad didn't leave much life insurance, and Mom fell apart. She was a homemaker in the most traditional sense. She had never paid a bill, never balanced a checkbook, never pumped her own gas. I was just finishing my accounting degree. I stepped up. I moved back home. I managed the small inheritance to pay off the mortgage on the family home, or so Mom thought. In reality, the bank was about to foreclose. I used my own credit, my own first job's salary, to refinance the house. Because my credit was the only thing holding us up, the title company and the bank put the house in my name. I tried to explain this to Mom at the time, but she was in a fog of grief. She just signed where I told her to sign and thanked me for saving Daddy's house. Over the years, I let her believe it was hers. It was easier that way. It gave her dignity. Kyle, on the other hand, never stepped up. He stepped out. He dropped out of college, started a DJ business, failed. Started a t-shirt company, failed. Got into crypto, lost everything. Through it all, I was the safety net. I paid for his car repairs so he could get to interviews. I paid his rent deposits. I was the responsible, boring sister who didn't know how to have fun, while Kyle was the dreamer. Then came Brooks. Brooks entered the picture 5 years ago. He met Mom at a church social. He claimed to be a retired investment consultant. In reality, he was a grifter who had burned through 3 previous wives. He moved in within 2 months. From the moment Brooks arrived, the dynamic shifted. He realized quickly that I was the gatekeeper of the family finances, and he hated me for it. He started whispering in Mom's ear. "Margaret is controlling you with money, Brenda. Margaret thinks she's better than us because she has a degree. Why does Margaret have a new car when you're driving that old Honda?" He groomed Kyle, too. He became Kyle's biggest cheerleader, encouraging his worst impulses. "The system is rigged, Kyle. Your sister is part of the system. You and we're the disruptors." It was Brooks who convinced Mom that my monthly stipend wasn't a gift, but an obligation. It was Brooks who encouraged Kyle to get into this luxury car arbitrage scheme that eventually got him arrested for fraud. And now, I was sitting in my car, realizing the extent of Brooks's infection. I needed to know exactly what I was up against. I drove to the county clerk's office instead of going home. I needed to pull the records. Not for the house, I knew I owned that, but to see if Brooks had tried anything shady. I sat in the dusty records room, my chest aching, scrolling through the digital files, and then I found it. A lien attempt. 6 months ago, a document had been filed attempting to take out a second mortgage on the house. The applicant, Brenda and Brooks. The application had been denied. Why? Because the title search revealed the truth. Brenda didn't own the house. I did, they knew. I stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting in my eyes. They knew the house was mine. The rejection letter would have been mailed to the house. They had opened it. They had seen it. That meant Brooks knew he had no legal claim to the property. It meant his comment about getting blood from a stone was a calculated risk. He was banking on my guilt. He was banking on me being too soft to ever kick my own mother out. He thought I was weak. I thought about the surgery I needed. I thought about the 3 months of recovery where I would have 0 income. I thought about the $50,000 sitting in a bail bondsman's safe, money that could have saved my heart, now being used to save a criminal. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Kyle. "Hey sis, heard you're out of the hospital. Mom said you were tripping about money. Don't worry, this business deal is gonna pop off soon and I'll pay you back double. Can you spot me $500 for groceries? Brooks said you'd be cool with it." I stared at the text. The audacity was breathtaking. I wasn't cool with it. I was done. The text message from Kyle sat on my screen like a taunt, glowing in the dim light of my car. "Can you spot me $500 for groceries? Brooks said you'd be cool with it." My thumb hovered over the reply button. The old Margaret, the dutiful daughter, the reliable sister, the good one would have sent the money. I would have sighed, complained to a friend over coffee, and then transferred the funds, telling myself it was to keep the peace. I would have rationalized that Kyle needed to eat, that Mom needed peace of mind. But the old Margaret died in that hospital room when she realized her own mother had chosen a criminal's freedom over her daughter's life. I didn't reply. Instead, I drove straight to the office of a lawyer I knew from my firm, Sarah. She specialized in real estate and elder law. I didn't have an appointment, but when she saw my face, pale, drawn, and furious, she ushered me right in. "Margaret," Sarah said, closing the door, "you look like you've seen a ghost. Are you okay?" "I need to evict my mother," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "and her husband, and my brother." Sarah blinked, then sat down slowly. "Okay, start from the beginning." I laid it all out, the house title in my name, the years of paying the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the secret stipend, the family emergency fund that was now gone, the denied loan application that proved they knew I owned the house, and finally the medical crisis that made my need for liquidity desperate. Sarah listened, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked up, her expression grim but professional. "This is messy, Margaret," she said. "Even though the deed is in your name, they have tenant rights. In this state, if they've lived there for more than 30 days, which they have for years, you have to give them proper notice. Usually 30 days to vacate. If they refuse, we have to file for an unlawful detainer lawsuit. That can take months." "I don't have months," I said, panic flaring in my chest again. "I have weeks before this surgery deposit is due." Sarah tapped her pen against the desk. "There might be another way, a faster way. Did you ever have a lease agreement with them?" "No," I admitted. "It was just family." "Okay," Sarah said. "But did you ever declare the income from them on your taxes, even if it was zero?" "Yes," I said. Being an accountant, I was meticulous. I declared the fair market value of the rent as a gift on my taxes every year to avoid gift tax issues later. And I have emails. Years of emails where Mom acknowledges that I let them stay and thanks me for paying the mortgage. Sarah's eyes lit up. "That's gold. That establishes a tenancy at will. We can terminate that tenancy with a 30-day notice. But here's the kicker. If we can prove waste, that they are damaging the property or engaging in illegal activity on the premises, we can expedite the eviction to 3 days." "Illegal activity?" I asked. "Like drug use or running a fraudulent business," Sarah suggested. "You mentioned Kyle was arrested for fraud." "Yes," I said, "but that was outside the house." "Are you sure?" Sarah pressed. "Where did he run his business from? Did he use the home address for his LLC? Did he store inventory there?" I thought about the garage. It was always locked. Kyle insisted it was his office. "I think so," I said slowly. "I think he used the garage." "Go check," Sarah said. "If you find evidence of illegal activity on your property, we can serve a 3-day notice to quit for nuisance. And Margaret, change the locks on the garage immediately if it's separate from the house." I left Sarah's office with a plan. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a landlord protecting her asset. But first, I needed to see what was in that garage. I waited until I knew they would be out. Every Tuesday night, Brenda and Brooks went to bingo at the community center, and Kyle usually went to a bar to network. I pulled up to the house at 7:00 p.m. The driveway was empty. My heart hammered against my ribs, a dangerous rhythm for someone in my condition, as I used my key to let myself into the main house. It was quiet. I went straight to the door connecting the kitchen to the garage. It was locked. A deadbolt I didn't have a key for. That was new. I went outside and around to the side door of the garage. It was also locked, but the window next to it was unlocked. I grabbed a crate from the garden, stood on it, and peered inside. My breath caught in my throat. The garage wasn't an office. It was a warehouse. Stacks of high-end electronics, televisions, gaming consoles, laptops were piled floor to ceiling. There were boxes of designer handbags, and in the corner a massive server rack hummed, the lights blinking rapidly. It looked like a fencing operation, or a crypto mining farm run on stolen electricity. I took out my phone and started snapping photos through the glass. I got the serial numbers on the boxes where I could. I got the server rack. I got the timestamp. Then I saw something else. On a workbench in the back, there was a stack of mail. I zoomed in with my camera. It was my mail, bank statements, credit card offers, but also letters from a specialist regarding my condition, letters I had never received at my apartment. They had been intercepting my mail. A cold fury washed over me, replacing the fear. This wasn't just ungratefulness. This was calculated malice. They were stealing from me while living under my roof. I had the leverage. Now I needed to use it. The next morning, I returned to the house. I didn't go alone. I brought Sarah and I brought a process server, a large man named Tony who looked like he could bench press a Buick. Brenda answered the door in her bathrobe, looking annoyed. "Margaret, what are you doing here this early? And who are these people?" "We need to talk, Mom," I said, stepping past her into the living room. "Get Brooks, get Kyle." "Kyle is sleeping," she hissed. "And Brooks is in the shower, you can't just barge in here." "Actually, she can," Sarah said calmly, following me. "As the legal owner of the property, Margaret has the right to enter with reasonable notice. Or in the case of an emergency inspection." "Owner," Brenda scoffed, "it's my house, your father bought it." "And the bank was taking it back 20 years ago," I said. "I bought it from the bank. The deed is in my name. You know that, Mom. You signed the papers." Brooks emerged from the hallway, a towel around his waist, water dripping from his chest. "What the hell is this noise? Margaret, get out." "Sit down, Brooks," I said. My voice was low, but it carried a weight I didn't know I possessed. "We're done playing happy family." Kyle stumbled into the room, rubbing his eyes. "What's going on? Who's the suit?" he asked, gesturing to Sarah. "This is my lawyer," I said. "And this," I pointed to Tony, "is a process server." Tony stepped forward and handed 3 envelopes to Brenda, Brooks, and Kyle. "You have been served." "Served with what?" Brooks demanded, tearing open the envelope. "A 3-day notice to quit for nuisance and illegal activity," Sarah explained. "You have 72 hours to vacate the premises." "Illegal activity?" Kyle laughed nervously. "You're crazy, I'm an entrepreneur." I pulled out the photos I had taken the night before. I tossed them onto the coffee table. The photos of the electronics, the server rack, the intercepted mail. "Entrepreneur," I asked, "is that what we're calling fencing stolen goods now? Or is it tax fraud? Because I'm pretty sure the IRS doesn't know about the income you're generating from my garage." Kyle's face went white. He looked at the photos, then at Brooks. "You went into my office." Kyle shouted, his voice cracking. "That's invasion of privacy." "It's my garage," I shot back. "And those are stolen goods, aren't they?" "They're inventory," Brooks yelled, stepping forward aggressively. Tony took a step toward him and Brooks faltered. "We're holding them for a friend. You can't prove anything." "I don't have to prove it to the police right now," I said. "I just have to prove it to a judge to get you out. But if you don't leave in 3 days, I will call the police. And I think they'd be very interested in where all that inventory came from." Brenda looked between us, her eyes wide and fearful. But her fear wasn't for me. It was for Kyle. "Margaret, you can't do this," she pleaded, grabbing my arm. "He's your brother. He'll go to jail if the police come. He's on probation." "He's on probation?" I asked, stunned. "You told me he had never been in trouble before." "It was a mistake," Brenda cried. "He was just confused. Margaret, please, we're family, you have plenty of money, just let us stay. We'll get rid of the stuff in the garage, just don't kick us out." "I don't have plenty of money," I screamed, finally losing my composure. "I have heart failure, I need surgery, and you gave my surgery money to a bail bondsman for him." I pointed a shaking finger at Kyle. "You chose him over my life, Mom, again." "He needed it more," Brenda shrieked back. "You're strong, you always figure it out. Kyle is fragile." The words hung in the air like toxic smoke. "You're strong, Kyle is fragile." It was the mantra of my entire life. The excuse for every neglect, every overlooked achievement, every stolen dollar. "I'm not strong anymore," I whispered. "I'm dying, and I'm taking my house back to pay for the surgery that will save me." "You selfish bitch," Brooks spat. "You'd put your own mother on the street." "You have 3 days," I said, turning away. "Sarah will handle the rest." As we walked to the door, Brooks yelled after us. "You'll never get us out. We have rights. I'll sue you for every penny you have. I know people." "He's bluffing," Sarah said quietly as we got into her car. I know, I said, but my hands were shaking. But he's desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. The next 3 days were a nightmare of escalation. Brooks didn't pack. Instead, he went on the offensive. He started posting on Facebook, tagging all our relatives and mutual friends. Long, rambling posts about how his ungrateful stepdaughter was throwing her elderly mother out on the street because she was greedy and jealous of her brother's success. My phone blew up. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were texting me, calling me heartless. My aunt left a voicemail calling me a monster. But Brooks made a critical mistake. In his rage, he posted a photo of himself in the garage, working hard to support his family, with the stack of stolen electronics clearly visible in the background. I screenshotted everything. Meanwhile, Sarah and I were building our case. We found the Leon attempt documents. We found the utility bills that had skyrocketed due to the server farm in the garage, bills I had been paying on autopay without looking closely enough. On the second day, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Margaret?" A woman's voice asked. She sounded timid. "Yes," I said. "My name is Jessica. I saw Brooks's post on Facebook. I used to date Kyle." My stomach tightened. "Okay." "He did this to me too," Jessica said. 3 years ago, we lived together. He convinced me to take out a loan for his business. Then he stopped paying rent. When I tried to kick him out, Brooks showed up and threatened me. They said they'd tell everyone I was abusing Kyle. I lost my apartment. I'm still paying off that loan." "I am so sorry," I said, my heart aching for this stranger. "I have texts," Jessica said. "I have emails where Brooks threatens me. I have proof that Kyle admitted to the fraud, if you need them. I want to help. I want to see them stop." "Please," I said, "send me everything." Jessica sent a treasure trove of evidence. It wasn't just texts, it was a pattern. A documented history of Kyle and Brooks targeting women, girlfriends, friends, and now family, to drain them dry. With Jessica's evidence, Sarah filed for an emergency restraining order against Brooks and Kyle, citing the threats made to Jessica as proof of their potential for violence. The judge granted it. The sheriff was scheduled to execute the eviction and serve the restraining order on the morning of the 4th day. But on the night of the 3rd day, the night before the deadline, I got a call from the security system I had installed at the house years ago, the one Brenda never used. Motion detected, garage. Motion detected, back door. I pulled up the camera feed on my phone. It was grainy, but I could see them. Brooks and Kyle were frantically loading the electronics into a U-Haul truck. They were stripping the place. Then I saw Brooks stop. He picked up a crowbar. He walked toward the back door of the main house. He's going to trash the house, I realized, terror spiking through me. He's going to destroy the asset before I can sell it. I called the police. "This is an emergency," I told the dispatcher. "I have a restraining order pending, and the subjects are destroying my property right now." I didn't wait. I got in my car and drove. I knew it was dangerous. I knew I should wait for the cops. But that house was my only lifeline. It was my surgery. It was my future. When I pulled up, the U-Haul was running. The front door of the house was wide open. I ran inside. The living room was a wreck. The TV was smashed. The sofa was slashed. "Mom!" I screamed. I found her in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table, sobbing. Brooks was there, holding the crowbar, smashing the cabinets. Kyle was ripping copper piping out from under the sink. "Stop it!" I yelled. "Stop it right now." Brooks turned to me, his face twisted in a manic grin. "You want the house, Margaret? You can have it. We're making a few renovations first." He raised the crowbar and brought it down on the granite countertop, shattering it. "Brooks, please," Brenda wailed. "That's enough." "Shut up, Brenda," Brooks roared, turning on her. "This is your fault. You raised a stingy, ungrateful brat." He raised the crowbar again, but this time he wasn't aiming at the counter. He was aiming at the wall behind Brenda, or maybe at her. "No," I screamed, throwing myself between them. The crowbar didn't hit me, but the sight of me clutching my chest, gasping for air as my heart fluttered wildly, made him pause. "You're pathetic," Brooks sneered. "You're going to die alone, Margaret." "Maybe," I wheezed, my vision tunneling, "but at least I won't die a thief." Sirens wailed in the distance. Blue and red lights flashed against the living room walls. Kyle dropped the pipe. "Cops, Brooks, let's go." "It's too late," I said, slumping to the floor. "They're here." The front door burst open. "Police, drop the weapon." As the officers swarmed in, tackling Brooks and handcuffing Kyle, I looked at my mother. She wasn't looking at them. She was looking at me, lying on the floor among the shattered glass and ruined cabinets. For the first time in her life, she looked truly, terrifiedly alone. The aftermath of that night was a blur of flashing lights, raised voices, and the crushing weight of realization. While the paramedics checked my vitals, my heart rhythm was erratic but stable enough to avoid immediate transport. I watched from the stretcher as officers led Brooks and Kyle away in handcuffs. Brooks was shouting obscenities about squatters' rights and false imprisonment, his face purple with rage. Kyle, true to form, was crying, pleading with the officers that he was just helping his mom move. But the real climax wasn't the arrest. It was what happened 3 days later. It was the day of my uncle's funeral. Uncle Jerry had passed away suddenly the week before, a quiet man who had always been kind to me. The entire extended family was gathering at a local community hall for the reception. Brenda had been laid out not by me, but by her sister, Aunt Linda, who took pity on poor Brenda after hearing Brooks's spun version of events. I wasn't planning on going. I was weak, exhausted, and frankly, terrified of facing the family who had been poisoned against me. But Sarah, my lawyer, gave me a piece of advice that stuck. "If you don't tell your story, Margaret, they will write it for you. And in their version, you're the villain." So I put on a black dress that hung a little too loosely on my frame. I gathered my medical records, the property deed, the police report from the renovation attempt, and the stack of evidence Jessica had sent me. I put it all in a neat folder. I walked into the community hall just as the eulogies were finishing. The room went silent. Brenda was sitting in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, surrounded by comforting relatives. When she saw me, she stiffened. "Margaret," Aunt Linda hissed, stepping into the aisle to block me, "you have some nerve showing your face here after what you did to your mother, kicking her out, getting her husband arrested." "I'm here to pay my respects to Uncle Jerry," I said, my voice projecting in the quiet hall, "and to set the record straight." "We don't want to hear your lies," a cousin shouted from the back. "Lies?" I asked, walking past Linda to the front of the room. I placed the folder on the table next to the guest book. "These aren't lies, these are public records." I opened the folder. I held up the deed. "This is the deed to the house. I bought it 20 years ago to save Mom from foreclosure. I have paid every mortgage payment, every tax bill, every repair." I held up the police report. "This is the report from 3 nights ago. Brooks and Kyle were arrested for felony vandalism and possession of stolen property. Stolen property, they were fencing out of my garage." The room was murmuring now. Brenda looked pale, her eyes darting around. "And this," I said, holding up the medical report, "is my diagnosis. I have severe heart failure. I need a $40,000 surgery to live. Mom knew this. I called her from the hospital. Do you know what she did?" I looked directly at Brenda. "Tell them, Mom. Tell them what you did with the emergency fund I spent 15 years building for us." Brenda stood up, trembling. "It was for the family. Kyle was in trouble." "Kyle is always in trouble." I snapped. "You took $50,000, money that could have saved my life, and gave it to a bail bondsman for a fraud charge. You chose his freedom over my heartbeat." "He's your brother," Brenda wailed, the same tired defense. "And I am your daughter." I screamed, the raw pain finally breaking through. "I am the one who kept the lights on. I am the one who fixed the roof. I am the one who made sure you had groceries. And when I needed you, when I was dying, you left me to rot." I pulled out the last piece of paper. It was a printout of the text messages from Jessica, documenting the pattern of abuse and financial exploitation by Brooks and Kyle. "And Brooks," I continued, turning to the stunned family. "He's not a retired investor. He's a con man with a record in 3 states. He's been draining Mom's accounts for years. He tried to take a second mortgage out on my house behind my back." I tossed the folder onto the table. Read it, don't take my word for it. Read the police reports. Read the bank statements. Read the lies. I looked at my mother one last time. She was sobbing now, but no one was comforting her. The family, aunts, uncles, cousins were picking up the papers, passing them around, their expressions shifting from anger to shock to horror. "I'm done," I said quietly. "I'm selling the house. I'm getting my surgery. And I am never, ever letting anyone use me again." I turned and walked out of the hall. No one stopped me. No one said a word. The silence was heavy, suffocating, and absolutely perfect. The fallout was swift and total. The evidence I presented at the funeral spread through the family like wildfire. Aunt Linda, who had been Brenda's staunchest defender, read the police report detailing the vandalism and the stolen goods. She went to the jail herself and demanded answers from Brooks. When he couldn't keep his story straight, she pulled her bail money for him, too. Brooks remained in custody. It turned out the inventory in the garage was linked to a string of burglaries in the next county. With his prior record, the DA wasn't offering a plea deal. He was looking at 10 to 15 years. Kyle didn't fare much better. The fraud charges from his investment scheme combined with the possession of stolen property meant he was facing significant time. Without Mom's enabling or my money to bail him out, he was forced to use a public defender. He eventually took a plea deal for 3 years in state prison. As for the house, the damage was extensive, but insurance covered most of it because I had filed the police report immediately. I sold it, as is, to a developer for a cash offer. It wasn't the top of the market price I might have gotten if it were pristine, but it was enough. I got my check. I paid the hospital deposit. I had the surgery a week later. The recovery was brutal. For the first 2 weeks, I couldn't lift anything heavier than a milk jug. But for the first time in my life, the silence in my apartment wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. There were no frantic phone calls, no guilt trips, no unexpected crises that only money could fix. About a month after my surgery, I was sitting on my balcony, watching the sunset when my phone buzzed. It was Mom. I stared at the screen. I hadn't spoken to her since the funeral. She was staying with Aunt Linda now, sleeping on a pull-out couch, her own assets frozen or gone thanks to Brooks. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it later. Her voice was small, broken. "Margaret, I'm so sorry. I didn't know, I didn't see. Brooks, he tricked me. And Kyle, I just wanted to help him. I miss you. Please call me." I didn't call back. I realized that forgiveness doesn't mean letting people back in to hurt you again. I could forgive her for being weak. I could forgive her for being manipulated. But I couldn't forget that when the choice was between my life and her delusions, she chose the delusions. I used the rest of the house money to pay off my condo and boost my retirement fund. I went back to work part-time. I started taking painting classes, something I had wanted to do for 20 years but never had the time or money for. I have a scar on my chest now, a thin pink line that reminds me every day that I survived. Not just the heart failure, but the heartbreak. I survived the people who were supposed to love me. And most importantly, I learned the most expensive lesson of my life. You cannot set yourself